At long last, telcos are investing more in their fixed broadband access network infrastructure, but the return on investment model can still be challenging as traffic volumes are growing at a much faster pace than revenues. Well, to find out how operators can close the gap by improving the efficiency of their broadband networks, I'm talking today with Coert de Boer, VP of Global Professional and Deployment Services Fixed Networks at Nokia. So, Coert, what are the broadband operators doing to close this gap?
Well, actually, I think it is changing because historically, when they built networks, they pretty much, certainly fixed access networks, they pretty much built them and thought they were kind of okay. And unless there were customer complaints, they were doing something about this. But with the, as you mentioned, the gigabit race and gigabit services that the operators try to put in place, the COVID requirements, people working from home much more, but also the 5G backhaul kind of aspects put a much bigger strain on these fixed access networks, and there's a higher interest to understand whether these networks are actually doing what they're supposed to do. Are they getting their value out of these networks? And so operators are more and more looking at this kind of stuff and looking at it not only from a customer experience perspective, but also from a network operations perspective. So on both dimensions, they're really interested to understand how the fixed access network is performing.
And what are the key challenges that operators face in optimizing their fixed broadband networks?
Yeah, actually, most importantly, I think they see a discrepancy between what they think they have designed and what is in the field and what is actually in the field. And this is around access node security, this is around unused capacity, the network design in general. And that is obviously really surprising and a problem. And I actually noted down some statistics based upon the 50 plus or so network health checks that we have done. And I'd like to mention a couple of them here because I think they're really telling. So 40% of the CO nodes are without a network card redundancy and uplink protection. Also, 20% of the fiber path can be considered problematic due to low optical power on these paths. And what I thought was the most surprising one is that more than 70% of the access nodes don't use the available security mechanisms. And so some of these things might be conscious choices that an operator makes because it makes sense for them. But if you look at some of these statistics, they're actually quite telling. And again, most operators don't really have a view of where they stand from this perspective. In addition, within an operator, multiple departments have kind of a different view of where they stand and how they are performing. And so getting a kind of an independent, neutral, benchmark kind of a report is very helpful from that perspective.
So from your experience, how do operators approach a successful optimization?
Yeah, so it all starts with baselining, right? And as I said earlier, they typically have they have very little understanding of how the network is actually performing and how they're doing from many perspectives. So baselining, and we have an approach here, as I mentioned, the health checks. This is an approach where we use an automated kind of approach with about 200 parameters that is used in a network, and it measures the network from all kind of perspectives, and it gives the operator kind of a baseline of where they are, and also we publish based upon that the network health index, so how they are performing against the peers in the industry, other operators, and the best in class kind of operators. And this typically gives kind of a reason to drive certain optimization tracks, and we work then in an agile way, typically with the operators, to identify what are the most important things to work on, where they would get the biggest bang for the buck, and in a very agile kind of way, because you don't need to have very big programs around this. It's really like a repetitive agile kind of approach. You can start to optimize your network, and at the end of the day, obviously with the objectives that you've set for your organization, you will get to the results, and because you keep on measuring this on an ongoing basis, you know pretty much how you're improving from many perspectives.
Can you tell us perhaps about a customer example, an operator that has undertaken this kind of task?
Yeah, so for us, it started very much in the Asia Pacific region. So maybe it's good to give an example of a tier one operator in the Asia Pacific region. They were trying to launch IPTV services with their customers, and they were really struggling. Customers were quite unhappy. They were complaining. Actually, they had a lot of churn. And so they were looking for understanding where they were falling short and how this could be improved. And so we worked with them, and what we found is that there were all kind of quality issues around the passive fiber, which they needed to address and which they did address. There were significant discrepancies, as I said earlier, between, in this case, also the design that they made and the actual implementation in the field. And the way they were operating the service was also quite different from what they thought they were actually doing. And they also uncovered that they had about 15% typically unused capacity in the network that they were not aware of. And so with some targeted marketing campaigns, they were able to really improve also their top line from that perspective. So as a result of that exercise and actually the repetitive exercise that we've done with them, they have been able to increase their penetration rate. Obviously, the customer experience has gone up, and therefore the complaints have gone down, which also has a huge impact, obviously, on the operational cost of this particular operator. So for them, this has been a real success, and I think typically what you see in our network health index, they're coming out as one of the top kind of benchmark companies, and actually one that a lot of others try to aspire to get to the same level of performance, if you will.
So how is Nokia able to help operators that want to optimize their broadband networks?
Yeah, so we are and we have been working obviously with about 300 fixed access network operators around the world. So a lot of the operators, most of the operators around the world are our customers. And so I mentioned earlier this network health check. So we have developed this capability in a highly automated way, a framework with about 200 parameters, which is testing the network on the operational side, on the network design side, and all this kind of stuff. And so these 200 data points give the operator really the knowledge and understanding of where they stand compared to the competitors, but also more importantly, compared to where they want to be. And then typically what we do with them, we design a couple of what I would call swim lanes of improvements. So in an agile kind of way, we help them identify these improvement areas, implement these improvement areas, and get to the outcome. And it's a very tailored kind of approach, because you don't, as an operator, typically want to improve everything. You really want to understand where, again, you get the biggest return. And so you want to focus on those kind of things where you can get the most impact and really help you compare to what your objectives are in your particular market. So what we do see, it's very much a very tailored approach that we typically build with our customers from that perspective.
Okay, interesting developments there. And the fixed access network's so important for customers and so many different types of services these days. So really interesting to hear what Nokia is doing. Coert, thanks very much for joining us today. Thanks.
Thanks for having me.